I don't just build. I know how things fall apart. Marriage. That wonderful American institution where love goes to die, a slow, expensive death. I'm Elliot Brooks, and after 12 years of wedded bliss, I've learned that architects aren't just good at designing buildings. We're pretty damn good at spotting structural flaws in relationships. 2. The rain hammered our 2-story colonial in Millbrook, Maine like bullets against glass. It was past midnight when I heard Sam's BMW pull into our driveway. Through our smart doorbell app, I watched my wife of 12 years stumble out of a silver Porsche that definitely wasn't hers. Samantha Brooks, successful attorney, pillar of the community, my supposedly faithful wife, was giggling like a teenager as she adjusted her post-gym workout clothes. Funny thing about those clothes, they looked suspiciously wrinkle-free for someone who'd supposedly been sweating through a late-night client dinner, pretended to be asleep when she slipped into bed, reeking of expensive cologne that wasn't mine. Her breathing was quick, excited, the kind of breathing you get after doing something you shouldn't. It was dinner. I mumbled, playing the oblivious husband. Boring. Just contract negotiations with the Morrison account. Her voice was steady, practiced. Sam had always been a good liar. It's what made her such an effective attorney. The next morning brought more rain, and the first crack in my carefully constructed world. I was reviewing architectural plans in my home office when Sam burst through the front door, her face flushed with what looked like genuine panic. "Eli, thank God you're here." She was breathing hard, her designer purse clutched against her chest. Someone broke in. They ransacked the living room. I followed her downstairs, coffee mug in hand, and surveyed the damage. Our living room looked like a tornado had hit it. Couch cushions, scattered drawers pulled out, her jewelry box overturned on the hardwood floor. "Did you call the police?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I wanted to tell you first." "Oh God, Eli, I think I know who did this." She turned to me with tears in her eyes, real tears, which impressed me. "I saw Paul lurking around the house last night when I got home. He looked different, angry." Paul Hart had been my best friend since we were kids, building tree forts in the woods behind Millbrook Elementary. He'd become a private investigator after leaving the police force, and he'd never liked Sam. The feeling was mutual. "Paul wouldn't do this," I said firmly. "Look at the facts, Eli. He's been acting strange lately, making those comments about our marriage, and he's been struggling financially since his divorce." Sam's lawyer voice was kicking in, building her case. "I think he took my grandmother's necklace, the Tiffany bracelet you gave me for our anniversary. They're gone." Walked around the living room, my architect's eye taking in details. The damage looked random, but there was something off about it, like someone had tried too hard to make it look authentic. "We should call the police," I said, pulling out my phone. Sam's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. "Maybe we should think about this first. I mean, if Paul is having problems, if he did this, he needs help. And if he didn't, we need to find out who did." I shook off her grip and dialed 911. 20 minutes later, Detective Maria Mendez stood in our living room, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. She was new to Millbrook PD, transferred from Portland, and she had the kind of nonsense attitude that made people nervous. "Mrs. Brooks, you said you suspect Paul Hart." Mendez's pen was poised over her notepad. "I hate to say it, but yes. I saw him outside our house around 11:30 last night. He was just standing there, staring at our windows." Sam dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "He and Eli have been friends forever, but Paul's never liked me. He's made comments." "What kind of comments?" "That I'm not good enough for Eli, that I'm using him. Nasty things like that." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Either my wife was setting up my best friend, or my best friend had lost his mind. Neither option was particularly appealing. "Mr. Brooks, do you have any security cameras?" Mendez asked. "Yes, we have a smart doorbell and interior cameras. I can pull the footage." I grabbed my laptop and logged into our security system. "Here's last night, starting around 11 p.m. We watched the footage together. At 11:47 p.m., Sam's BMW pulled into the driveway. She sat in the car for nearly 10 minutes, talking on her phone. Then she got out and walked to the front door. No sign of Paul anywhere. "That's strange," Sam said, her voice tight. "I could have sworn I saw him Let's check the interior cameras, Mendez suggested. I clicked through to the living room feed at 6:23 a.m. About 20 minutes before Sam discovered the break-in. The camera showed our living room in perfect condition. Then, at 6:24 a.m., Sam entered the frame. For the next 15 minutes, I watched my wife systematically destroy our living room. She pulled out drawers, scattered cushions, and carefully placed her jewelry in her purse before overturning the empty box. When she was finished, she stood back and surveyed her work like an artist admiring a painting. The room went silent, except for the rain against the windows. Mrs. Brooks, Detective Mendez said slowly, "I'm going to need you to put your hands behind your back." Sam's arrest made the local news by noon. Prominent attorney arrested for filing false police report. The Millbrook Gazette ran it as their lead story, complete with Sam's law firm photo and a shot of her being led away in handcuffs. She was released that evening. No jail time, just a hefty fine and a suspension from her law firm, pending investigation. But in a town like Millbrook, reputation is everything, and Sam's was now in tatters. I was waiting in the kitchen when she got home. Divorce papers spread across the granite countertop, like architectural blueprints for the destruction of our marriage. "Eli, we need to talk." She looked exhausted, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her makeup smeared. "I think we're past talking, Sam." I tapped the papers with my pen. "I've already filed. I've also frozen our joint accounts and changed the locks. Your stuff is packed in the garage." Her face went through several emotions: surprise, anger, calculation. "You can't do this. This house is half mine." "Actually, it's not. I bought it before we got married. Remember, you insisted on keeping your name off the deed for tax purposes." I smiled, probably not very nicely. "Funny how that worked out. This is about Paul, isn't it? You're choosing him over me. This is about you framing an innocent man. This is about you lying to my face for God knows how long. This is about you staging a break-in in our home." I stood up, gathering the papers. "But mostly, Sam, this is about the fact that I don't know who you are anymore." She tried tears again, but they looked forced this time. "I made a mistake. I was scared. Things have been so difficult between us lately. Save it for your next client dinner." I headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Sam, I know about Logan Pierce." The blood drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." Silver Porsche, expensive cologne, those late-night client meetings that happened to coincide with his business trips to town. I turned back to face her. "I'm an architect, Sam. I notice details." That night, I met Paul at the Rusty Anchor, Millbrook's only decent bar. Big Mike, the owner, had been serving drinks and collecting secrets for 30 years. If you wanted to know what was really happening in town, Mike was your man. "Jesus, Eli, I'm sorry about Sam." Paul raised his beer bottle, though, I got to say. Watching her get arrested was pretty satisfying. After all the crap she's put you through, you never liked her. "Nope, and she never liked me. But I wouldn't have broken into your house, even if I thought she deserved it." Paul took a long drink. "So, what's your next move?" "I want to know everything about her and Pierce, about what they're planning, about how long this has been going on." I leaned forward. "I want to know it all." Paul grinned. It wasn't a nice grin. "Now you're talking my language." We spent the next week playing detective. Paul used his pie connections to dig into Logan Pierce's background, while I played the role of the devastated husband, gathering sympathy and information from our mutual friends. Logan Pierce was everything I wasn't: flashy, wealthy, and completely without scruples. He owned Pierce Development, a company that specialized in buying up small-town properties and turning them into generic strip malls. He'd been married 3 times, divorced twice, and was currently separated from wife number 3. "Guys, a real piece of work," Paul reported over coffee at my office. "Multiple affairs, shady business deals, and a reputation for getting what he wants, regardless of who gets hurt. Perfect match for Sam." Then there's more. I talked to my buddy at the bank. Pierce has been having cash flow problems. His latest development project is hemorrhaging money, and he's got creditors breathing down his neck. I looked up from my architectural drawings. So, he needs money or a good lawyer who might be willing to help him hide assets in a divorce. The pieces were starting to fit together. Sam wasn't just having an affair. She was positioning herself to be Pierce's next wife and business partner. The fake break-in wasn't about framing Paul. It was about making me look unstable, setting the stage for a divorce where she could claim I was mentally unfit. They underestimated one thing. I told Paul, "What's that? I'm really good at reading blueprints, and this whole thing, it's got structural flaws everywhere." That evening, I got a call from Melissa Grant, Sam's best friend, and the town's biggest gossip. Mel sold real estate and had her finger on the pulse of every scandal in Millbrook. "Eli, honey, I need to tell you something." Her voice was shaky about Sam and Logan. I should have said something sooner, but I didn't want to get involved. "What is it, Mel?" "They've been planning this for months. The affair, the divorce, everything." Logan promised Sam a partnership in his development company, but she paused. "I heard them talking yesterday. Logan's planning to throw Sam under the bus. He's going to claim she seduced him, that she initiated everything. He's already talking to his lawyer about damage control." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Sam's my friend. But what she did to you and Paul was wrong. And because Logan Pierce is a snake who destroys everything he touches." Mel's voice hardened. "He tried to buy my house last year for half its value. When I said no, he started rumors that it had foundation problems. Cost me 3 sales before I could prove him wrong." After I hung up, I sat in my empty house, listening to the rain and thinking about blueprints. Every building needs a solid foundation. Sam and Logan had built their scheme on lies, greed, and the assumption that I was too trusting to fight back. They were about to learn that architects don't just design buildings. Sometimes we design demolitions, too. Logan Pierce lived in a glass and steel monstrosity on the shores of Millbrook Lake. The house looked like something from a magazine, all clean lines and expensive furniture, but no soul. It suited him perfectly. I drove up the circular driveway on a gray Saturday morning, my truck, looking shabby, next to his collection of luxury cars. The silver Porsche that had dropped off my wife sat gleaming in the garage like a trophy. Pierce answered the door in a silk robe and designer pajamas. He was handsome in a generic way, the kind of man who paid for his smile and his tan. When he saw me, his expression shifted from confusion to amusement. "Eli Brooks, I was wondering when you'd show up." He stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. "Coffee. I was just having breakfast." "This won't take long." I followed him into a kitchen that probably cost more than most people's cars. "I want to talk about my wife." "Ex-wife. From what I hear, sorry about the divorce. Man, these things happen." He poured himself coffee from a machine that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. "Sam's a remarkable woman. Beautiful, intelligent, ambitious. Married. Not anymore." Pierce leaned against the marble countertop, studying me like I was an interesting insect. "Look, Eli, I get it. You're hurt, but Sam made her choice. She wants more than what you could give her, and you can give her more. Money, excitement, a real future. Not just designing strip malls in small-town Maine." His smile was sharp. "No offense." I walked to the wall of windows overlooking the lake. The view was spectacular. Probably cost him an extra $1 million just for the scenery. "Nice place. Must be expensive to maintain." "I do." "All right, really?" "Because from what I hear, Pierce Development is about 3 months from bankruptcy." I turned to face him. "Funny thing about small towns. Everybody knows everybody's business." Pierce's smile faltered slightly. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know you've been using Sam to hide assets. I know you promised her a partnership that you can't deliver. And I know you're planning to throw her under the bus when this whole thing goes south." I stepped closer. "What I want to know is what you're really after." "You're fishing. I'm an architect. I understand how things are built, and I understand how they fall down. Your whole operation, it's got cracks in the foundation." Pierce set down his coffee cup, harder than necessary. "Get to the point." "The point is simple. Stay away from my wife." "Ex-wife. And that's her choice to make, not yours." Pierce straightened up, trying to use his height advantage. "Sam's a grown woman. If she prefers my company to yours, that's not my problem." "It will be." Something in my voice made him pause. "Is that a threat?" "It's a blueprint." I headed for the door, then stopped. "Oh." And Pierce You might want to check your car. I was halfway down the driveway when I heard him shouting. The Porsche's air conditioning system was now filled with a creative mixture of honey, fish guts, and Limburger cheese. It would take weeks to get the smell out, assuming it ever came out at all. By Monday morning, the whole town was talking. Sam had been spotted at Pierce's house over the weekend. The story of her arrest had spread through Millbrook like wildfire, and people were choosing sides. Most of them weren't choosing hers. I was reviewing construction plans when Paul burst into my office, grinning like a kid at Christmas. "You're not going to believe this," he said, dropping into the chair across from my desk. "I just had coffee with Detective Mendez. Guess who tried to file a vandalism complaint against you? Pierce. But here's the beautiful part. He can't prove anything. No witnesses, no security cameras, and the vandalism is just a bad smell that could have come from anywhere." Paul leaned back in his chair. "Mendez told him to take it up with his insurance company. What about Sam?" "That's where it gets interesting. Mel called me this morning. Apparently, Sam and Pierce had a screaming match yesterday. He's backing out of their arrangement, claiming she's too much of a liability after the arrest." Paul's grin widened. "She threatened to expose his business dealings if he dumps her, and he threatened to release some very compromising photos. Doesn't back off quietly." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What kind of photos? The kind that would end her legal career permanently. Apparently, Pierce likes to document his conquests. The rain started again as I drove home that evening, turning Millbrook streets into rivers of gray water. I was thinking about photographs and blackmail, and the various ways people destroy each other. When I noticed the headlights in my rearview mirror, the car had been following me since I left the office, staying exactly 3 car lengths behind through every turn. When I sped up, it sped up. When I slowed down, it matched my pace. I turned onto Elm Street, then quickly doubled back on Maple. The headlights followed. My follower was either very dedicated or very stupid. Led them out of town, onto the winding back roads that cut through Millbrook's forests. The rain was coming down harder now, making the asphalt slick and treacherous. Perfect conditions for an accident. But I knew these roads like I knew the blueprints in my office. I'd been driving them since I was 16, and I knew every curve, every pothole, every place where the shoulder dropped off into nothing. 3 miles outside town, I made my move. There's a sharp S-curve on Miller Road where the trees close in on both sides. I took it at full speed, my truck's tires screaming against the wet pavement. In my mirror, I saw the pursuing car try to match my maneuver. It didn't work out well for them. The car, a black SUV with tinted windows, skidded sideways, overcorrected, and slammed into a massive oak tree. Steam rose from the crumpled hood as I pulled over and walked back. The driver was conscious, but dazed, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. He was a big man with tattoos, and the kind of face that suggested violence was his preferred method of problem solving. "You okay?" I asked, though I wasn't particularly concerned about his welfare. He glared at me through the spider-webbed windshield. "You're going to pay for this, Brooks." "I don't think so. See, you were following me. That makes this your fault." I pulled out my phone and took several photos of the scene. "What I'm curious about is who's paying you? Pierce, Sam, or are you freelancing?" The man tried to open his door, but the frame was too bent. He was trapped until the tow truck arrived. "Tell your boss. This is just the beginning," I said, walking back to my truck. "And next time, maybe don't follow an architect on roads he helped survey." Tuesday morning brought news that Pierce Development had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The Millbrook Gazette ran the story with obvious glee. Pierce had never been popular in town, and his financial collapse was being treated like a local holiday. I was having breakfast at Murphy's Diner when Sam walked in. She looked terrible, hollowed and desperate, her usually perfect appearance showing cracks. She spotted me in my corner booth and walked over like a woman heading to her execution. "Eli, we need to talk. I'm reading the paper. Fascinating stuff about local business failures." I held up the Gazette so she could see Pierce's photo on the front page. "Amazing how quickly things can fall apart. Logan's lost his mind. He's threatening me, saying I'm the reason his business failed." Sam slid into the booth across from me without being invited. "I need your help. My help. I set down the paper and really looked at her. You framed my best friend, destroyed our marriage, and now you want my help. I made mistakes. I know that. But Logan's dangerous. Eli. He's not the man I thought he was. What did you think he was? A knight in shining armor, who was going to rescue you from your boring architect husband. Sam flinched. I thought he was successful, stable. I thought he could give me the life I wanted. And what life was that exactly? More than this. She gestured around the diner, at the worn vinyl, booths, and faded photographs of old Millbrook. More than small-town gossip and tiny dreams. I wanted something bigger. So you decided to burn down everything we built together. What we built. Sam's voice rose, drawing stares from other customers. Eli, you designed strip malls and small office buildings. You've never had an ambitious day in your life. Was suffocating. Then you should have left. Filed for divorce like a normal person, instead of trying to destroy Paul and make me look crazy. I needed leverage for the settlement. She stopped, realizing she was confessing to a room full of witnesses. You needed to make me look unstable so you could claim more assets in the divorce. I leaned forward. The fake break-in wasn't about Paul at all. It was about making me look paranoid and dangerous. Sam's silence was answer enough. Here's the thing, Sam. You picked the wrong mark. I'm not some naive small-town guy you can manipulate. I'm an architect. I see how things fit together, and I see how they fall apart. I stood up and dropped money on the table for my coffee. And your whole scheme, it's collapsing faster than Pierce's business. That afternoon, Paul came by my office with news that made everything click into place. I talked to my contact at the phone company, he said, settling into his usual chair. Sam's been calling Pierce 20-30 times a day since his bankruptcy filing. Most of the calls last less than a minute. He's not picking up. She's desperate. Gets better. Mel called me this morning. Sam's been trying to borrow money. First from Mel, then from other friends. She's claiming Pierce owes her money from some business deal. How much money? $50,000. Says she invested in his company, and now she's broke. Paul grinned. Of course, there's no record of any investment. Sam just spent the last 6 months living like Pierce was going to take care of her forever. Now she's got credit card debt, legal bills, and no job. I thought about Sam sitting across from me in the diner, looking desperate and cornered. She's going to try something stupid. Already has. Mendez called me an hour ago. Someone broke into Pierce's house last night, trashed the place, stole his computer and some files. Guess who the prime suspect is? Sam's not that stupid. Desperate people do stupid things. And Sam's about as desperate as they come. Paul leaned forward. There's something else. The guy who followed you yesterday, Darren Murphy, small-time enforcer from Portland. He's in the hospital with a concussion and a broken wrist. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. But here's the interesting part. Murphy told the cops that Pierce hired him to send you a message. Problem is, Pierce is claiming he never heard of the guy. So, somebody's lying, and somebody's about to do something really stupid. Paul stood up. I think we should be ready. We didn't have to wait long. That evening, I was working late in my office when I heard footsteps in the hallway. The building was supposed to be empty. I was the only tenant who regularly worked past 6. I quietly opened my desk drawer and activated the security camera app on my phone. The building's cameras would record everything that happened in the next few minutes. Sam appeared in my doorway, looking wild-eyed and frantic. She was carrying a large purse and wearing latex gloves. Sam, working late. I need to get some papers from your files. Documents from our marriage that I need for the divorce. She was trying to sound casual, but her voice was shaking. At 9 p.m., wearing gloves. I have a skin condition. She stepped into my office, looking around nervously. Where do you keep personal files? I don't. This is my business office. Sam, you know that. I stood up slowly, keeping my hands visible. What are you really doing here? I told you. I need to plant something. Pills. Maybe stolen property. Something that will make me look like the unstable one when the police find it. I stepped closer. The question is, what did Pierce promise you if you could frame me for something serious? Sam's composure finally cracked. He has photos, Eli. compromising photos that will destroy me if they get out. He's demanding $50,000 to keep them private, and I don't have $50,000. So, you thought you'd plant evidence in my office, and then call the police. I thought, if you were arrested, you might need a lawyer. I thought you might pay me to represent you. The words came out in a rush. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm desperate. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. And Logan's threatening to ruin what's left of my life. Sam, you're holding a bag full of what I assume is illegal material, wearing gloves, and confessing to a plan to frame me for a crime. I held up my phone, and I've been recording this entire conversation. The blood drained from her face. You can't, and I did. Now, put the bag on my desk and step back. For a moment, I thought she might run. Then, her shoulders sagged, and she set the purse on my desk like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Inside were 3 bags of white powder, a Colt, with the serial numbers filed off, and a manila envelope full of what looked like stolen credit cards. Jesus, Sam, where did you get this stuff? Logan gave it to me, he said. It was untraceable, that the police would never connect it to either of us. She collapsed into a chair. I never wanted it to go this far. I just wanted a different life. You wanted a different life, so you decided to destroy mine. Before she could answer, Paul walked into the office. Thought you might need backup, he said, taking in the scene. I've been watching the building since 6. Call Detective Mendez, I told him. Tell her we have another situation. Sam looked up at me, with tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices. I sat back down at my desk, suddenly feeling very tired. You know what the funny thing is, Sam? If you just asked for a divorce, I would have given you half of everything. The house, my business, all of it. I loved you that much. And now you're going to prison. Pierce is bankrupt, and I'm going to rebuild my life without either of you in it. Detective Mendez arrived 20 minutes later with 2 uniformed officers. Sam was arrested on charges of breaking and entering, attempted evidence planting, and possession of controlled substances. The Colt and credit cards would likely add federal charges to her list of problems. As they led her away in handcuffs, Sam looked back at me one last time. I'm sorry, Eli. I really am sorry. So am I, Sam. So am I. The next morning brought a media circus to sleepy Millbrook. Sam's second arrest in 2 weeks had attracted attention from Portland and Boston news outlets. Small-town lawyer's crime spree was the headline in the Portland Press-Herald. I was drinking coffee and avoiding reporters when Paul knocked on my door. You're famous, he said, holding up his phone. Channel 6 wants to interview you about your brave stand against corruption. I'm not talking to reporters. Smart, but you might want to see this. He showed me a news article on his screen. Pierce held a press conference this morning. Logan. Pierce stood behind a podium at his lawyer's office, looking haggard but defiant. According to the article, he was claiming that Sam had seduced him, stolen business documents, and tried to extort money from him. He's throwing her under the bus, just like Mel predicted. I said, gets better. Pierce is claiming he hired that thug Murphy to protect him from Sam. Not to threaten you. Says he was afraid she might become violent. And the pills she tried to plant. Pierce claims he's never seen them before. Says Sam must have gotten them from another source. Paul grinned. Of course, Murphy's lawyer is telling a different story. Says Pierce hired his client to intimidate you. And now, Pierce is trying to cover his tracks. I set down my coffee and really looked at Paul. You're enjoying this. Damn right I am. These people tried to destroy you, and they tried to frame me. Watching them tear each other apart is the best entertainment I've had in years. But the entertainment was just getting started. That afternoon, Detective Mendez called with news that changed everything. We found something interesting on Pierce's computer, she said. Turns out he's been documenting his affairs for years. Photos, videos, financial records. We're talking about evidence of blackmail, tax evasion, and fraud going back 5 years. What does that mean for Sam? It means she's not Pierce's first victim. We've identified at least 3 other women he's blackmailed, including his current wife. Sam's lawyer is already talking about a plea deal. Cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Will she take it? If she's smart, Pierce is looking at federal charges now. The FBI is taking over his case, and they're very interested in his business practices. That evening, Mel called me with the kind of gossip that makes small towns famous. Eli, honey, you need to hear this. I just got off the phone with Pierce's wife. Well, his soon-to-be D. She's filing for divorce and demanding half of everything, including assets he's been hiding offshore. I thought he was broke. That's what he wants everyone to think. But his wife hired a forensic accountant, and they found millions in hidden accounts. Pierce has been claiming bankruptcy while stashing money in the Cayman Islands. So the whole broke developer thing was an act. Complete fiction. He was planning to emerge from bankruptcy with his hidden assets intact and start over somewhere else. Probably with Sam as his new business partner and wife, number 4. I thought about Sam, sitting in jail, probably realizing that everything Pierce had told her was a lie. What happens to the bankruptcy case? Fraud charges, most likely. When you lie to federal bankruptcy court, they take it very personally. Mel's voice was full of satisfaction. Logan Pierce is going to spend the next decade in federal prison. The next few days passed in a blur of legal proceedings and media attention. Sam's lawyer negotiated a plea deal. 5 years in prison in exchange for full cooperation against Pierce. She would testify about his blackmail schemes, his hidden assets, and his plans to defraud creditors. Pierce's empire collapsed like a house of cards. The FBI seized his properties, froze his accounts, and arrested him on charges of fraud, blackmail, tax evasion, and racketeering. His wife filed for divorce and claimed half of his hidden millions. His business partners sued him for fraud. His victims came forward with stories of manipulation and abuse. I was working in my office when Paul brought me the final piece of news. "It's over," he said, dropping into his chair with a satisfied sigh. Pierce just took a plea deal. 25 years in federal prison, full restitution to his victims, and forfeiture of all assets. And Sam sentenced yesterday, 5 years, eligible for parole in 3. She'll serve her time at the women's facility in Danbury. Paul leaned back. Her law license has been permanently revoked, of course. I stared out my office window at the streets of Millbrook, where life was slowly returning to normal. The reporters had gone home. The gossip was dying down, and people were finding new scandals to discuss. "You know what the strangest part is?" I said. "If Sam had just been honest with me, if she'd said she was unhappy and wanted a divorce, I would have given her everything she wanted. The house, half my business, alimony, whatever she needed to start over. But that wasn't enough for her. She wanted it all. And she wanted you destroyed in the process. She wanted me to be the villain in her story, the small-minded husband who was holding her back from her dreams." Paul was quiet for a moment. "Are you sorry it turned out this way?" I thought about Sam in her orange jumpsuit, about Pierce in his federal cell, about the wreckage of their schemes scattered across 2 states. "No," I said finally. "They made their choices. They built their plans on lies and greed, and the assumption that other people were too stupid or too trusting to fight back. They were wrong. So, what's next for you?" I looked at the architectural drawings spread across my desk. Plans for a new community center, a small office building, a renovation of the old library. Small projects maybe, but honest work that would make Millbrook a better place. "I'm going to keep designing buildings," I said. "And maybe someday I'll find someone who appreciates small-town dreams and tiny ambitions." Paul grinned. "You know, Eli, I think Sam was wrong about one thing. Bissett, your dreams aren't tiny. They're just honest. And in a world full of people like Pierce and Sam, honest dreams are pretty damn rare." That night, I sat on my front porch with a beer, watching the rain fall on Millbrook's quiet streets. My house felt different now. Not empty, but peaceful. The weight of lies and deception had been lifted, replaced by the simple satisfaction of truth. Sam had wanted more than I could give her. Pierce had promised her everything and delivered nothing but destruction in the end. Their grand schemes had collapsed under the weight of their own dishonesty, while my small-town life remained solid and real. I raised my beer to the empty street and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being the person your enemies thought you were too weak to be.